Hi everyone, my name is Gautam Bhatia and I'm a science fiction writer and editor. I'm also a constitutional lawyer, but this edition of Shelf Picks is not going to be about constitutional law or law or even non-fiction, but it will be about science fiction and what we call more broadly speculative fiction. Now, when you say science fiction, for many people there is an immediate, almost negative reaction because people tend to associate science fiction with spaceships and engineering, technical stuff, often written by white men, and there is a sense that it is inaccessible and only for a certain kind of person. But nothing could be actually further from the truth. Right from the beginnings of the genre, science fiction's always been a very diverse and inclusive way of writing. And the science in science fiction doesn't just mean the physical sciences; it also means the social sciences. So, the first recommendation I have is from what is commonly known as the golden era, or just after that, the new wave era of science fiction, late 1960s, early 1970s. And one of the people who spearheaded that era was a writer called Ursula LeGuin. And this book is The Left Hand of Darkness. And Ursula LeGuin, her parents were anthropologists. She herself was very interested in anthropology. And what she explored in her novels was basically societies organized in different ways and along different lines. And so, for example, Left Hand of Darkness is set on a cold ice planet where people are basically androgynous. So they're neither male nor female, but on a monthly basis, they could be either biologically. And it explores the reactions that an individual who comes from a planet like ours, where the genders are more clearly segregated, has when they engage with the people on that planet. And of course, this was written in the 1970s, and our understanding of the fluidity of gender has moved on quite a bit since then. And so in many ways, this book is a little dated, but it was radical for its time, and you can still see the radical edges if you read the book. Another novel that LeGuin wrote was The Dispossessed, which actually explored how an anarchist society would exist in practice, specifically neighboring, a classic capitalist society, which looks a lot like our planet, And so the social science aspect of science fiction has always been a prominent part of it, and Ursula Le Guin's books were amongst the most famous examples of that kind in the classical era of science fiction. It is a tradition that has continued on to this day in modern science fiction. So one book that I really enjoyed recently, which in fact has been nominated for the Arthur C. Clarke Award of Science Fiction just today, is Ray Nayler's The Mountain in the Sea. And The Mountain in the Sea is a book about what in science fiction we call first contact, which is the first occasion when human beings meet an alien species. And of course, first contact stories normally take place in outer space, on different planets and so on. This is different. In this, the first contact is between human beings and a very intelligent octopus species that has basically evolved at an accelerated rate, on the ocean floor because of climate change and various other human-made interventions into the biosphere. So basically, these octopi have gained intelligence and sentience. They can communicate. They have a social life, social organization, and the book is entirely about the way in which human beings and these octopi attempt to communicate or not, and in the backdrop of the climate catastrophe or climate change. It is a lyrically and very poetically written book, and I think if you want to really, if you're interested in this idea of first contact, of unintelligibility, you may have seen the film Arrival, issues of that kind. This is a very subtle and sensitive exploration of some of those issues which modern science fiction is exploring. Around 10 years ago, there was a book that basically rewrote the rules of the genre and is widely accepted to be a genre-changing book. This is Ann Leckie's Ancillary Justice. And again, Ann Leckie's Ancillary Justice is one of those books which, expands our notion of identity, of the gender spectrum, and so on, because the protagonist in Ancillary Justice is basically a sentient spaceship. And this is again a theme that is explored quite a bit in modern science fiction, where actually the spaceship has sentience, and it has a spirit, a soul, and a lot of that book is actually focused on just identity, and the borders of identity, how identity blurs at the margins, pronouns, and what they mean, and that when that book came out, it was the first book to explore those ideas, and since then it's really almost created a tradition of a certain kind of science fiction writing. Ancillary Justice belongs to the broader genre of science fiction called space opera, where you have these galaxy-spanning, stories that really explore the depths of space and of time without necessarily being technical or hard to understand. It is my personal favorite subgenre of science fiction. I think that one of its foremost protagonists or writers right now is the writer Alastair Reynolds. And one of his favorite books that for me, is The House of Suns. Now, Reynolds has written a lot and has explored near future and far future science fiction, explores ideas around justice, around policing in societies that have high technology, how does it interact with democracy, sort of in a galactic space. But House of Suns is perhaps his most ambitious novel, because it actually takes place over 6 million years, and the same people are involved. So this is one individual who clones themselves multiple times and then sends out their clones into the galaxy. And these clones basically are in deep sleep, and they wake up once every circuit. And so basically they live, because when you're traveling at the speed of light or near it, time passes much more slowly, right? And of course you're also in cryo sleep preservation. So they basically live for millions of years, and you can imagine just living for 1,000 years, and what the memories would be, and how we'd see the world pass by. And now just expand that to living for 6 million years, and just, how the human mind can just even encompass that kind of longevity, and, what your memories would be, stars born and dying, and supernovas and all of that. And the way he explores that just gives you a sense of wonder. And I think that the real beauty of science fiction actually is the way in which it instills a sense of wonder and awe, in the reader. And Reynolds' work, does that so well. This should not obviously make you think that the only science fiction being written is Western or written by, Americans or Brits. That's not the case. Here is a really interesting novel by a really interesting writer. So Yoss is a Cuban biochemist, a punk rocker, and science fiction writer. That's quite the combination. And he's also a big fan of detective fiction. And so Red Dust actually is detective fiction, science fiction, inspired by Raymond Chandler. That's the nickname of one of the robots who's the main characters in the novel. And it spans the solar system. It's like trying to, it's like a chase in the solar system, but also with a very interesting concept, which I think I actually should read out, because I will mangle it. It is a science concept. There is in this book a diabolical perp who uses psi powers to alter the shape of the Gaussian bell curve of statistical probability, making it rain indoors, say, or causing a would-be captor to shoot himself in the face. I mean, it sounds technical. The next part of it obviously does not, but it's not actually technical. It's just it's a wild ride, through the solar system with laws of physics being altered and robot detectives, and it's just a lot of fun, which again the best science fiction always is. It is of course a time when there is an ongoing genocide in Palestine, and so I thought that it would be important to talk about Palestinian science or speculative fiction. Palestine Plus 100, a book published by Comma Press, is part of the Plus 100 series. So you have Iraq Plus 100, Kurdistan Plus 100, and so on. It basically imagines Palestine 100 years after the Nakba, which of course is 1947, the catastrophe, the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians from historical Palestine, which made many of them exiles. So it basically imagines Palestine, and by extension Palestine and Israel, in 2047. These stories, short stories, not always easy to read for obvious reasons, but they are worth reading, and they're very good. They are melancholy, they are often sad, and they are hard, but that is the point. So I would recommend that if you're interested specifically at this time to be engaging with Palestinian art. Finally, you may ask, what about Indian science fiction? There is a lot that's being written recently. I think a good place to start would be the Gollancz book of South Asian science fiction. It's now in 2 volumes, Volume 1 and Volume 2. And it's short stories, a bunch of short stories, and you basically will see the kind of work that's being done in Indian SF. And of course, if you enjoy some of the writing, you can then follow it up, read those writers' other works. So these stories explore climate change, India's specific fault lines, caste, religion, and so on, our troubled history, partition, what it might mean, extending into the future, alt histories, and so on. It also has some old science fiction from Indian writers which has been translated. Rahul Sankrityayan, you wouldn't associate him with science fiction, but he wrote a short story about India in 2022. So that's in this collection. Yeah. So if you want to just have an introduction to Indian SF, contemporary Indian SF, this would be a good place to start. So that, I think, is a far too brief whistle-stop tour through modern SF, some of my favorite books, I think, and some of the books I think represent what is best about the modern genre, which is, as I said, not just spaceships and gunfights in space and Death Stars and Star Wars. That is an important part of the genre, and there are people who love that, and that's great. It is not just Asimov, Clarke, those names. That's a long time ago. Of course, those names are relevant, but in many ways the genre has passed by. There's a lot to it. It is diverse and it is inclusive. A lot of it is being written by non-white, non-male, non-global North writers, and it is very interesting. There is Chinese science fiction. Cixin Liu, of course, probably heard of Three-Body Problem, but a lot more. Chen Qiufan, Hao Jingfang, a fantastic short story called Folding Beijing, which you can read online for free. There is Afrofuturism and African futurism, two different concepts, but there is a lot of science fiction coming from African countries. There is Brazilian and Mexican spec fic. There is from Eastern Europe. There's a lot of stuff. There's been a long tradition over there. The famous novel Solaris is from there, and there's a lot more going on right now. In fact, the word robot was first invented by Karel Čapek in a book called RUR, 1920s. So again, Eastern Europe has a long tradition of science fiction, and of course, there is closer home Indian science fiction. So I hope that that's piqued your interest a little bit, in exploring modern science fiction. And of course, if there's more you want to explore, things available online, and of course, hit me up, and I'll be happy to make more recommendations. So thanks for this, and I hope you enjoy your journey exploring science fiction.